On the night of April 15, 1992, a 24-year-old teacher named Lisa Ziegert was working alone in a small gift shop in Agawam, Massachusetts. The store was open, the lights were on. Her purse was behind the counter, but Lisa was gone. 4 days later, on Easter Sunday, her body was found in the woods, stabbed, assaulted, left there like she meant nothing, and then silence for 25 years, no arrest. No answers, no justice. The killer walked free, lived in the same town, smiled at the same people, and no one knew. But here's where this story takes a turn that no one saw coming. One evening in September 2017, a woman walked into a police station carrying 3 handwritten letters that were never meant to be found by the police. Letters written by a man who thought he would take his secret to the grave. What was in those letters? Shattered a community, destroyed a family's 25-year wait, and exposed a monster who had been hiding in plain sight. Now, before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you believe that no killer should ever sleep peacefully, hit that like button right now, subscribe to this channel, because the stories we tell here are the ones the world tried to forget, and share this video, because Lisa's story deserves to be heard. This is the story of the music box murder. Agawam, Massachusetts, a small town, a quiet town, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where people don't lock their doors at night, where nothing bad ever happens. In 1989, the people of Agawam actually voted to not become a city. They wanted to stay small, stay safe, stay the way things were, and at the center of this little town was a girl named Lisa Marie Ziegert, 24 years old, brown curly hair, blue eyes, a smile that could light up any room she walked into. Lisa was a teacher's aide at Agawam Middle School. She worked with special needs children, kids who were different, kids who sometimes felt invisible, but not with Lisa. She made every single one of them feel like they mattered. Her brother David once said, "She was kind of a big kid herself. She was ready to enjoy life and see the silliness in things." The children loved her, the parents loved her, the whole town loved her, but teaching doesn't pay much, especially when you're just starting out. So Lisa took a second job, a part-time gig at a little card and gift shop called Brittany's Card and Gift Shop, right there on Walnut Street Extension in Agawam, every weekday. Lisa would finish school around 4:30 in the afternoon, drive straight to the shop, and work from 5 p.m. until closing time at 9 p.m. It was a simple routine, a normal life, nothing to worry about. Until April 15, 1992, a Wednesday, Lisa went through her normal day, school, kids, laughter. Then she drove to the card shop for her evening shift. Her sister Lynn stopped by around 5:30. They chatted for about half an hour, and then Lynn left. Lisa was alone. The hours passed. Customers came in, customers left, nothing unusual. At 8:20 p.m., a customer walked in, made a purchase, got a receipt with a timestamp. Everything was fine. Lisa was there, smiling, helping, being Lisa. That customer walked out, and somewhere between 8:30 and 8:50 p.m., Lisa Ziegert vanished, just like that. No scream heard by anyone outside. No 911 call, no alarms, nothing. 20 minutes, that's all it took. 20 minutes, and Lisa was gone from the face of the earth. But here's the part that will haunt you. At 9 p.m., just minutes after Lisa disappeared, another customer walked into the shop. The lights were on, the door was open, but nobody was behind the counter. The customer waited, and then they heard something, noises coming from the back room, banging, movement. Something was happening back there, but the customer didn't call the police, didn't go check, didn't do anything. They waited for a couple of minutes, and then they just walked away. They left the store, got in their car, and drove home. And Lisa was never seen alive again. The next morning, April 16, 1992, Sophia Maynard arrived at Brittany's Card and Gift Shop for her usual morning shift. She was the day clerk. Lisa was supposed to have closed up the night before, but the moment Sophia pulled into the parking lot, something felt wrong. Lisa's car was still there, the same car that should have left hours ago. The same car Lisa drove home every single night. Sophia walked to the front door. It was unlocked. The lights were still on. Music was still playing softly in the background. She stepped inside and called out Lisa's name. No answer. She called again, nothing. She walked behind the counter. Lisa's purse was there, her car keys, her coat, her school drawings. Everything was exactly where Lisa would have left them, if she was still there. But she wasn't. Sophia's heart started pounding. She later said, "I was pretty panicked at that point. I knew something obviously happened to her. My first instinct was to run and call the police." She ran across the street to a restaurant and had them call the police. Within minutes, Agawam Police Detective Wayne Macy was at the scene, and what he found inside that store told him everything he needed to know. This was not a girl who left on her own. This was not a runaway. This was not a misunderstanding. In the back storeroom, boxes were smashed and flattened. There were scuff marks on the floor, drag marks, like someone had been pulled across the ground. There was blood on some of the boxes, blood on greeting cards. And on one of the doors, there was a mark, a heel mark, like someone lying on the ground, kicking the door as hard as they could. Lisa had fought. She had fought with everything she had, but it wasn't enough. Detective Macy looked at the side door. It led to an alley behind the strip mall. That's where the killer took her. Out the side door, into a car, and gone, and no one saw a thing, or did they? Because that same night, at 9:15 p.m., just minutes after the customer heard the banging and walked away, a woman who worked near the card shop was driving home, and she saw something, a vehicle, a full-size truck like a Bronco or a Blazer, dark red or maybe dark blue. It was hard to tell in the dark. The truck drove off the main road and headed toward a wooded area on the edge of town. She thought it was just some kids messing around. She didn't think much of it. She kept driving. She had no idea that inside that truck was Lisa Ziegert, barely alive, being taken to a place where no one would find her, not for 4 days. The entire town of Agawam went into panic mode. Police launched a massive search. The Agawam Police Department, the Massachusetts State Police, the FBI, everyone, Lisa's mother Dee, her father George, her brother David, her sister Lynn, they organized search parties, they knocked on doors. They begged for information. Hundreds of people searched the streets, the woods, the parks, the fields day and night for 4 straight days. They prayed, they hoped. They held on to the belief that Lisa was still alive somewhere. And then came Easter Sunday, April 19th, 1992. A day that was supposed to be about hope, about new beginnings, about life, but for the Ziegert family, it became the worst day of their lives. At around 2 p.m. that afternoon, someone was walking their dog along a dirt path off Route 75, on the edge of Agawam, a wooded area, quiet, isolated, about 3 to 4 miles from the card shop. And there, about 250 yards off the road, they found Lisa. She was partially clothed. Her white blouse was soaked in blood. Her denim skirt had been torn in half, not along the seams, but ripped apart by force. By someone powerful. The medical examiner's report would later reveal the full horror. Lisa had been sexually assaulted. She had been stabbed multiple times around her shoulders and neck. The fatal wound was a single deep stab to her throat. But her hands told a story of their own, deep cuts, defensive wounds. Lisa had grabbed at the blade. She had fought her attacker with her bare hands. She fought until she couldn't fight anymore, and the murder weapon, the knife that took her life, was never found. Lisa's mother Dee said something that day that she would carry with her for the next 25 years. She said, "I went down to my knees." It was something I really didn't expect to hear. The town of Agawam was destroyed. At Lisa's funeral, more than 1,000 people showed up. They stood in the pouring spring rain for 5 hours, just to say goodbye to a girl who had touched all of their lives. One of her students said, "She was a friend to everyone. I wish there were more people in the world like her." And as those 1,000 people stood in the rain, crying, mourning, saying goodbye, somewhere in that crowd, or maybe just 5 miles away, Lisa's killer was watching the news, sitting in front of his television, following every detail, every update, every piece of evidence, because he wasn't a stranger from far away. He was a local, a neighbor, a husband, a father. And he had a secret that he would carry for the next 25 years, a secret that would finally be exposed by 3 handwritten letters, but that's coming later. First, the investigation. And the one woman who knew the truth from the very beginning, but no one believed her. And for more mysterious solved cold cases, please check links in the description below. The investigation into Lisa Ziegert's murder started fast, real fast. Detective Wayne Macy and his team worked day and night. They followed every lead, knocked on every door, talked to every person who had been anywhere near that card shop on the night of April 15th. The first thing they did was look at the people closest to Lisa, her boyfriend. He was the first one questioned. That's how it always works. Police always start with the people closest to the victim. The boyfriend, the ex, the family, but Lisa's boyfriend had an alibi, a solid one. And when they tested his DNA against the biological evidence found on Lisa's body, it didn't match. He was cleared. They moved on to other men in Lisa's life. Friends, acquaintances, co-workers, one by one. They tested them. One by one, they were eliminated. The killer was not someone Lisa was close to. He was someone else, someone in the shadows. Police started building a timeline from the tips that came in. 3 phone calls helped piece together the night Lisa vanished. The first call came from the customer at 8:20 p.m. The one with the time-stamped receipt. Everything was normal. Lisa was fine. The second was the customer who came in at 9 p.m., found the store empty, heard noises in the back room, and walked away. The third was the woman who saw the dark truck driving toward the woods at 9:15 p.m. That gave investigators a window. Somewhere between 8:20 p.m. and 9 p.m., in less than 40 minutes, Lisa was attacked, overpowered, dragged out the back door, and taken. 40 minutes. That's all it took to destroy a life, a family, an entire town. Police examined the crime scene where Lisa's body was found. They took plaster molds of tire tracks left in the dirt. The tires were identified as Cooper tires, a very specific combination, so specific that detectives were able to go through sales records of local tire dealerships and track down the vehicle. They found the driver, but he had been at that location days before the murder, just hanging out with friends. He had nothing to do with Lisa's death. Another dead end. Then came a tip that sent chills down everyone's spine. In the weeks before her murder, Lisa had told people something disturbing. She felt like she was being watched, not once, not twice, multiple times. She told her friends, she told her sister, she told her coworkers. She said she felt uncomfortable at the store. She didn't like being there alone anymore. She started asking friends and family to come visit her during her shifts, just so she wouldn't be alone. Lisa Ziegert, the bubbly, fun-loving girl who danced in parking lots when her favorite song came on the radio, was scared. And she had every reason to be, because someone was watching her. Witnesses at a local gym called Healthy Habits told police that a man had been watching Lisa and other women while they worked out. He watched Lisa closely, in a way that made people uncomfortable. One witness described it as perverted. The man was described as white, in his 30s, about 5'10", with a beer belly and wavy light brown hair. He wore work clothes and drove a red sports car. Police searched for this man, but they never found him, and to this day, no one knows if he had anything to do with Lisa's murder. The investigation was going nowhere. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Tips kept coming in, but none of them led anywhere solid. And then, in March 1993, almost a year after Lisa's murder, something happened that should have cracked the case wide open. A woman came forward, not just any woman. Her name was Joyce Shara, and she had something to say about her husband. Joyce Shara was married to a man named Gary Shara. They had a 1-year-old son together. They lived in Longmeadow, a town just 5 miles from Agawam. Their marriage was falling apart. They were in the middle of a bitter custody battle over their child. And Joyce had hired an attorney named Kevin Healy. During their meetings, Joyce told Healy something that made the attorney's blood run cold. She believed her husband, Gary, had killed Lisa Ziegert, and she had reasons. On the night of April 15, 1992, the night Lisa disappeared, Gary had come home much later than usual. He was different, amped up, restless. Joyce noticed something on his hands, cuts, scratches, fresh ones. She asked him where he had been, what happened to his hands. He couldn't give her a straight answer. The next morning, when the news broke about Lisa Ziegert's disappearance, Gary was glued to the television. Not in the way a normal person watches the news, not casual concern. He was obsessed. Every single time a news report came on about Lisa, Gary would stop whatever he was doing, rush to the television, and watch every second. Every detail, every update. Attorney Kevin Healy later said, anytime any news came out, she said that he would be glued to the television. He needed to know every single little detail about the murder and the progress of the case. But it got worse. Joyce found writings in Gary's diary, things that made her believe, without any doubt, that her husband was the one who killed Lisa, and there was something else. Something that Joyce didn't fully understand at the time, before Lisa's murder. Gary had given Joyce a gift, a music box, a small, delicate, beautiful music box. He said he bought it at Brittany's card and gift shop. He told Joyce that a little old lady with gray hair had sold it to him. But Lisa Ziegert didn't have gray hair. Lisa had brown curly hair and blue eyes. She was 24 years old. Gary lied about who sold him that music box, and police would later come to believe that the music box was the beginning of everything, that when Gary walked into that store, he saw Lisa, he became attracted to her, maybe even obsessed, and that obsession led to murder. But Joyce knew something else too. Something about their private life that terrified her. Gary had always been different in the bedroom. He pushed boundaries. He liked things that scared Joyce. He would hold a knife to her throat during intimate moments. He called it role-playing. Joyce didn't call it that. She was scared of her own husband, and now she believed he had done the unthinkable, so she told her attorney, and her attorney went to the police. This should have been the moment. The breakthrough, the beginning of the end for Gary Shara, but it wasn't. Because when Kevin Healy contacted investigators, Gary Shara's own divorce attorney stepped in, and he told the police, don't listen to her. He said Joyce was unstable, that she was an alcoholic, that she was a scorned wife in a nasty divorce trying to destroy her husband's reputation to win custody of their son. He said this was nothing more than a desperate woman making false accusations. And the investigators listened to him, not to Joyce. They brought Gary in for an interview. He came willingly. He was polite, calm, charming even. He answered their questions without any problem. But when they asked him for a DNA sample, he said no. He refused, and his reason, he said, he was afraid of cloning. Cloning, that was his excuse. In 1993. A grown man sitting in a police station, telling detectives he couldn't give his DNA because he was scared someone would clone him. The detectives looked at each other. They didn't have enough evidence to force him. No search warrant. No court order. Joyce's tip had been dismissed. Gary had refused DNA, and just like that, he walked out of that police station. A free man, Detective Macy later said. At this point, we take it as far as we can, and barring anything else coming in, we don't have enough to get a search warrant or a subpoena to get Gary in and have him give us his DNA. Gary Shara went home that day, and he wouldn't be seriously looked at again. For years, meanwhile, Joyce was terrified. She believed she was living with a killer. She believed her son was in danger, so she did the only thing she could think of. She ran. Joyce took their son and fled across the entire country to Seattle, Washington. She hid with relatives. She changed her life. She took back her maiden name, McDonald. Gary didn't take this well. He filed a criminal complaint against Joyce for parental kidnapping. A warrant was issued for her arrest. The custody battle dragged on for years, and here's the part that breaks my heart. Joyce McDonald Shara, the woman who tried to tell the world that her husband was a murderer, died in 2014 on the West Coast, alone. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. No obituary was ever published. Her family said she struggled with alcohol and depression for most of her life after the divorce. She never saw Gary get arrested. She never saw the DNA match. She never heard him confess. She died 3 years before the truth finally came out. Her family and her attorney believe, to this day, that investigators didn't take Joyce seriously because she was an alcoholic. They dismissed her. They ignored her. They chose to believe Gary's lawyer over a woman who was trying to save other women from her husband. And because of that, Gary Shara walked free for 25 more years. 25 years. He got a new girlfriend, made new friends, worked at local restaurants, lived a normal life. People described him as outgoing, friendly, a regular guy. One of his former bosses at a German restaurant called the Hofbrauhaus in West Springfield said after Gary's arrest, "This guy is like Ted Bundy. He was a good-looking kid, reasonably good personality. In my wildest dreams, I never would have guessed." And in 1999, 7 years after he murdered Lisa Ziegert, Gary Shara moved to Agawam, the same town where he killed her, the same town where her family still lived, the same town where 1,000 people had stood in the rain to mourn her. He walked the same streets, shopped at the same stores, lived among the same people who mourned Lisa every single day. A detective once said about Lisa's killer, "This is someone who has blended right back into society. It's like a chameleon." He had no idea how right he was. But the clock was ticking, slowly, quietly, and technology was catching up because in 2016, 24 years after Lisa's murder, a brand new technology was about to do something that no detective, no FBI agent, no tip line had been able to do in over 2 decades. It was about to put a face on the killer, and when that face appeared on the screen, everything changed for 24 years. Lisa Ziegert's case sat in a filing cabinet, cold, untouched, gathering dust. Detectives came and went, some retired, some transferred, but the case never closed. The DNA sample from Lisa's body was preserved, waiting, sitting in a crime lab like a time bomb that hadn't gone off yet. And then, in 2016, a new man took charge. His name was Anthony Galuni, the newly elected Hampton County District Attorney, and this case was personal to him. You see, when Lisa was murdered in 1992, Galuni was just a kid, a young boy growing up in the same area. He remembered the news. He remembered the fear. He remembered how an entire community was shattered by the murder of a girl everybody loved. He later said, "It was something that resonated and stuck with you and in some ways haunted the town of Agawam and the people who experienced it." Now he was the district attorney, and he had the power to do something about it. Galuni had heard about a new technology, something that didn't exist when Lisa was killed, something that sounded almost like science fiction. It was called DNA phenotyping. Here's how it works. You take a DNA sample, even one that's decades old, and you feed it into a computer system. The system analyzes the genetic code, and it predicts what the person looks like: eye color, hair color, skin tone, freckling, face shape, even ancestry. It doesn't give you a name, but it gives you a face, and that changes everything. Galuni sent Lisa's crime scene DNA to a company called Paraben Nanolabs in Virginia. They ran it through their system, and in September 2016, they sent back the results. The killer was a white male, fair complexion, some freckling, brown or black hair, hazel or brown eyes, mixed Northern and Southern European ancestry. And at the time of the murder in 1992, he was approximately 25 years old. They even created a composite image, a digital sketch of what this man probably looked like, and then they age progressed it. They created a second image showing what he might look like now, at around age 50, when that composite was released to the public. The town of Agawam went into a frenzy, because people started saying, "I know that face, that looks like someone I've seen. I think I know who that is." But looking like someone isn't proof. DNA is proof, and the investigators still needed to match that DNA to a real person. So they went back to the files, all of them, 24 years of records, over 300 persons of interest, thousands of interviews, mountains of paperwork, and they started looking for one specific thing. Men who had been asked for DNA samples over the years and refused. The list came down to 11 men. 11 men who fit the profile. 11 men who were still alive. And 11 men who had said no to giving their DNA. One of those men was Gary Shara, and when investigators placed his photograph next to the Paraben composite sketch, the resemblance was striking, but looking like a sketch still isn't enough to arrest someone. They needed his DNA. And Gary Shara had been refusing to give it for over 2 decades. In 1993, he said no. In 2002, police brought him in again just to touch base. Gary was calm, relaxed, vague. He answered questions like it was a casual conversation. And once again, he refused to give DNA. His excuse was the same. He was afraid of cloning. In 2008, they brought him in one more time. Same story. Same refusal, but this time, the investigators noticed something strange, something they had never noticed before. Gary sat very carefully in his chair. He held himself tight. He didn't lean forward. He didn't rest his hands on the table. He didn't touch anything in the room, not the chair arms, not the table, not a glass of water, nothing. He was making absolutely sure that he didn't leave a single trace of his DNA anywhere at the time. Investigators thought it was odd, but they couldn't do anything about it. Now, in 2017, they finally had the tool they needed. In August 2017, DA Galuni went to the Hampton County Grand Jury. He presented his evidence. He asked for court authority to compel DNA samples from all 11 men on the list. The grand jury agreed. For the first time in 25 years, Gary Shara could not say no. On Wednesday, September 13, 2017, Massachusetts State Police Trooper Noah Pack drove to Gary Shara's apartment in West Springfield. He knocked on the door, no answer. Gary wasn't home, but his roommate was. Trooper Pack told the roommate that he had important paperwork to serve to Gary. He left a card with his contact information and asked the roommate to pass on the message. The roommate said he would, and that night, when Gary Shara came home, his roommate told him the news. State police were here, they have paperwork for you, and in that moment, Gary Shara knew. He knew the paperwork was a warrant for his DNA. He knew that if they got his DNA, it would match. He knew that 25 years of hiding, 25 years of lies, 25 years of saying he was afraid of cloning were over, and what he did next, no one expected. Gary Shara did not call a lawyer, he did not turn himself in, he did not run to the police station to cooperate. Instead, he sat down and he started writing 3 letters. The first letter was addressed to his girlfriend, Noel Des Lauriers, the woman he had been living with, the woman who had no idea she was sharing her life with a killer. It was 2 pages long, handwritten, and he signed it with a single large letter. Gee, this is what he wrote. I've been dreading the day I'd need to write this letter for almost as long as I can remember. First off, I love you. I hope you never doubt that. Now the hard part. You are going to find out some awful things about me today. They will tell you I abducted, raped, and murdered a young woman approximately 25 years ago. It is true, all of it. I had no intention of killing her when I grabbed her, but events spun out of my control. I was fascinated by abduction and bondage from an early age. I hated what happened. I despised myself. I thought of turning myself in hundreds of times over the years, but I truly am a coward. He wrote that the DNA warrant would send him away for life, and that it would all end. He would either take his own life or face the music. The second letter was addressed to the Ziegert family, the family of the girl he murdered 25 years ago. I can never apologize enough for taking your daughter and sibling from you. I have regretted it and hated myself every day since. I hope knowing who and knowing I am gone will bring you some closure and peace. I am so truly sorry. The third letter was his last will and testament. He was planning to die that night. After writing those 3 letters, Gary Shara placed them where Noel would find them, and then he disappeared the next day. Thursday, September 14, 2017, at around 6:15 in the evening, Noel Des Lauriers walked into her home. She found the letters, she read them, and her entire world collapsed. The man she loved, the man she shared her life with, the man she trusted, had confessed to murder. Noel didn't hesitate. She grabbed the letters, got in her car, and drove straight to the Massachusetts State Police Barracks in Westfield. She handed the letters to the desk officer. Trooper Noah Pack later said, there were 3 separate letters. One of them was essentially a confession letter. Another letter was a last will and testament. He also left an apology letter for the Ziegert family. The handwriting was confirmed as Gary Shara's. Now the police had a confession, but they didn't have Gary. He had vanished. Where was he? Was he already dead? Had he actually gone through with it? Investigators launched a frantic search. They tracked his movements. They checked hospitals. They checked morgues. And then they found him. Gary Shara was alive. He was in the emergency room at Johnson Memorial Medical Center in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. He had driven across the state line. He had taken a fistful of over-the-counter pills, Motrin, trying to end his life. But here's the thing, he didn't die because after taking the pills, he changed his mind. He drove himself to the hospital. The man who stabbed a 24-year-old girl in the throat, who wrote a confession and a last will and testament, who said he would rather die than face what he did, couldn't even go through with his own suicide. A suicide note was found on his car's dashboard, but Gary Shara was very much alive, sitting in a hospital bed, waiting to be treated for an overdose that he had caused. and then tried to undo. Police arrived at the hospital. And on September 16, 2017, 25 years and 5 months after he murdered Lisa Ziegert, Gary Edward Shara was arrested. Meanwhile, back at his apartment, investigators executed search warrants. They found his toothbrush. They sent it to the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory. The results came back. Gary Shara's DNA matched the single-source male DNA profile recovered from Lisa Ziegert's body in 1992. It was him. It had always been him. On December 8, 2017, a Hampton County grand jury indicted Gary Shara on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. He initially pleaded not guilty, but on September 25, 2019, 27 years after he killed Lisa, Gary Shara stood up in Hampton County Superior Court, and he changed his plea, guilty, first-degree murder. The kidnapping and rape charges were dropped because the statute of limitations had expired. But the murder charge carried the maximum sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge looked at him and asked, "You're pleading guilty to this charge of murder in the first degree of Lisa Ziegert because you are guilty and for no other reason, is that correct?" Gary Shara said yes. And just like that, it was over. But there's one more thing I need to tell you. After the arrest was announced, Lisa's mother, Dee Ziegert, stood in front of the cameras. The same woman who had gone to her knees when they found her daughter's body. The same woman who stood in the rain with 1,000 other people at her daughter's funeral. The same woman who had waited 25 years for this moment. And she said 4 words that carried the weight of a quarter-century of pain. "We got you, no matter how long it takes. You can always be brought to justice." And there was one more person who needed to say goodbye, Detective Wayne Macy, the man who had been at the crime scene on day 1. The man who had spent years chasing every lead. The man who had retired without ever solving the case that haunted him the most. After Gary Shara was sentenced, Detective Macy drove to Springfield Street Cemetery in Agawam. He walked to Lisa's grave, and he placed a single rose on the stone with a card because sometimes justice takes 25 years, but it comes, and for Lisa Marie Ziegert, it finally came. If this story moved you, if you believe that no killer deserves to hide in plain sight, then share this video. Send it to someone, let them hear Lisa's story because the people who are forgotten are the ones whose killers win. Lisa was not forgotten, and her killer did not win. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.